Thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to present you with several sentences which require corrections. Therefore, you're going to have to kind of dig deep into what you've learned so far regarding grammar, syntax, punctuation, and all the sort to be able to finesse or proofread these sentences. It's a really good practice and a way to measure kind of where we're at in terms of our language adoption. All right, I would also like to ask that you like and subscribe to the channel just to aid in broadening the audience for videos like this and this channel in general, which hopefully will facilitate me collaborating with other educators domestically and abroad to produce content that's free for students and other teachers to use in their own classroom. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at our first sentence, which reads, yesterday we seen Rhonda's sister, brother, and cousin at our neighborhood pool. Okay, I'll read that again. So it says, yesterday we seen Rhonda's sister, brother, and cousin at our neighborhood pool. There are a few things that you're definitely going to want to be on the lookout for. Go ahead and pause, make any and all corrections that you can, and please resume and we'll correct it together. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So let's scan at the beginning first, where we have yesterday, which is spelled correctly. It's the first word in the sentence, so it's also capitalized, which is fine. We seen, okay, right here, we can already see that we have an issue with tense. So the past tense, of see is saw. Instead of we seen, it should read we saw. Let me rewrite that because it's a little chunky. I apologize for my handwriting. Saw, S-A-W, so we saw Rhonda's sister, brother, and cousin. Let's pause there. I can actually hear what it's known as a list, or we're creating a series. Whenever you're producing a series of two or more objects or things or people or whatever, you do need to segment each of those individual items using a comma. But prior to that, let's first look at Rhonda's. It's a proper noun, it's someone's name, it's capitalized, it's fine, it's spelled correctly in this regard. Names in particular are given a lot more allowance in terms of their spelling. But disregarding spelling, we notice that there is an apostrophe after the S. Now what this does is it implies that we have more than one person named Rhonda, and these Rhondas are in possession of something. Instead, we actually have one or a singular Rhonda, singular individual, because we're talking about their family in this case. Therefore, the apostrophe should move from after the S to just before it, which now turns Rhonda into a singular proper noun. All right, let's reread. So yesterday we saw Rhonda's apostrophe S because she's in possession of her sister, comma, brother, comma, and cousin. This third, I'm going to go ahead and circle this in orange. This second comma is more of a style choice. Some people, depending on where you are, will disregard it and they will just allow this conjunction, which is and, to act as the last part of the series, or to act in place of that comma in the final part of the series. However, I would prefer, for me personally, to always have a comma prior to the conjunction, which in this case is and. All right, so rereading again. Yesterday we saw Rhonda's sister, brother, and cousin at our neighborhood pool, period. I don't see any other issues beyond that. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into our second sentence, which reads, each of them, children, have an original way of looking at their world. Lots to look out for. Again, please pause the video, make any and all corrections, and resume when you're ready to jump back into it. Okie doke, let's go ahead and take a look. Starting first at the beginning, it is capitalized. It's the start of a new sentence. It's fine. Each, and spelling is fine. Each of them children. Hopefully you were able to see that them should actually be those. We're talking about, the is a definite article, for example. Those acts similarly in the sense that we're referring to a specific set of something in its plural form. So we're talking about multiple specific kids, right? So them should actually be written as each of those. So those. Each of those, again, it's like a definite plural article. Children have a original way of looking at their world. Before we jump into, I'm sure what you can clearly hear is an error. So each of those children, then for whatever reason, there's a pause here. This is not something that is necessary. In fact, it makes an awkward feel for the sentence. So if I were to read it with that pause, so each of those children, pause, have an original way of looking at their world. Personally, I would strike it. I feel like that pause is unnecessary and again creates this awkward moment in the sentence that doesn't need to be there. Rereading. Each of those children have a original. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the article A. You'll notice that the word after A starts with a vowel. Anytime you have an article, whether it's a or and you're not sure which to use, always look to the next word or the word right after it. If it starts with a vowel, like it does in this case with the word original, O is the vowel, A, the article, must become an. Therefore, A, I'm going to go ahead and add an N to it, changing it to an, so it reads, each of those children have an original way of looking at their world. Now here's what's called a homophone. It's a word that sounds the same as another word, but they're spelled totally differently. And there is one of those tricky words because there are several forms of it. For example, you could have T-H-E-I-R, you could have T-H-E-R-E, again, forgive the handwriting, or you can have there as it's written now. However, this is the incorrect kind of there. This is the contraction. If we take a look at this contraction, we can see that its base word is they, plus the addition of are, making there. If I were to break up there, written in this contraction form, and read it, expanded below, it would read, each of those children have an original way of looking at they are world, which makes no sense, and it helps me to see that this is clearly not the correct form of there. Instead, it should be T-H-E-I-R. We're talking about possession, so it's the kind of there as in something belongs to them, as opposed to E-R-E, which refers to a location or a position in space. And it does end with a period. It's a statement. I think we're good in that regard. Now let's jump into another sentence. All right, here you have your project on metamorphosis in frogs was excellent, Mr. Menendez told Heather and I. Again, pause the video, make any and all corrections that you can, and resume so that we can correct it together. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look. Starting first, we have a capital to start our sentence, which is fine. Your project. But I'm going to pause and take a look at the first word, which is the contraction you are. Because your, if we were to break it up, would read the base word you plus the word are. So if I were to read it in its expanded form, it would read, you are project on metamorphosis in frogs. No. Instead, I can hear, just based on the context of the sentence, that your is referring to something you are in possession of, ownership. Instead of Y-O-U-R-E, it should be written as Y-O-U-R, as in it's yours, or it's something that belongs to you. So your project, so ownership, on metamorphosis in frogs was excellent. Mr. Menendez told Heather and I. Okay. Metamorphosis. I'm hoping that's spelled correctly. I believe it is. So, sorry. Metamorphosis looks like it's spelled correctly. In frogs was excellent. However, what I'm seeing here is there's a missing consonant. It should be a double consonant in the word excellent because it reads as excellent, which is spelled correctly. Not correctly, excuse me, which is read correctly, but it's spelled incorrectly. You need a double L. It was excellent. Mr. Menendez told Heather and I. Continuing, I can also see, let me go ahead and remove that highlight, that I have the title Mr. This title is abbreviated because instead of writing M-I-S-T-E-R for Mr., I'm abbreviating it as M-R, which means you must have a period following an abbreviation. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that now. The period is going to go ahead and right at the end of that R. Mr. Menendez, Menendez being a name or surname, it's a proper noun, it's capitalized, it's fine. Told Heather, also a proper noun, capitalized, and I. Independent subject pronoun I, capitalized, it's fine, period. That looks good, but hopefully you were able to figure out that here where it says Mr. Menendez told Heather and I is the writer attributing speech to a character, which in this case, Mr. Menendez being the one who has said something, which tells me also that there's dialogue in the sentence. And anytime you have dialogue in a sentence, you must showcase that using quotation marks wrapped only around the words that are said. Here I have, your project on metamorphosis and frogs was excellent. Mr. Menendez told Heather and I. Now, you will not complete with a full stop in his statement. Instead, you're going to go ahead and just to the left of that quotation mark ending his speech, you're going to include a comma just to generate that pause, which segues into the next part of the sentence, or the second clause, where you attribute that speech to Mr. Menendez. All right, looks good. And now let's go ahead and take a look at our final sentence, which again, please pause, make any corrections that you can, and resume as soon as you're ready. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. James has always been a nervous person. He worries whether or not he has a reason to. All right, let's take a look. So James, being the first word of the sentence and a proper noun, is capitalized. Has always, right away I can see that I have a double consonant where there does not need to be a double consonant. Always should be written with a singular L, always. Oh, I'm sorry, James has always been a nervous person. Now, let's reread that. So James has always been a nervous person. Pause. Comma. He worries. Let's stop right here. Now, anytime you want to, we're going to make a plural for certain words. You're going to go ahead, and the rule being for spelling at least, you're going to drop the Y and replace it with IE. In this case, IES. So it should be written as, let me just write the whole thing. Worries. So he worries whether or not, stop again. Here we have another instance of a homophone, a word that sounds like another but spelled totally different and possesses a different meaning. Here we have weather, as in the weather that you would see outside, like, oh, it's cold, it's going to be hot, it's going to be muggy, you know, the kind of atmospheric weather you would have. Instead, we're talking about weather, as in like a decision between, or among, excuse me, which should be written, weather should be written as W-H-E-T-H-E-R. So whether or not, as in we're here making a decision, he has a reason to. Now here we've got the preposition to, which should actually be pointing to something. In this case, I want to point it to a verb, which is a to be verb. Here we have whether or not a reason to be, period. Okay, and I believe, let me go ahead and stop sharing or recording. See if it saved. Did it save? Yes, it did. All right. Okay, thank you again for joining me for in these sentence corrections. Hopefully you were able to find most, if not all, or perhaps some that I missed. Feel free to leave a comment below letting me know. But I look forward to the next exercise in which we continue to practice some of what we've learned in English and apply it to, well, novel sentences. Again, if you would like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. All right, have a good day.